on Connecticut Green Trades. There's also that's more recreational. There's one that's a bit more commercial. Like Connecticut Maritime Authority. It almost seems there needs to be a gathering of municipalities or concerned waterfront property owners that can lever this, not have the death by 1,000 cuts, but have a comprehensive.
And that is one of my hopes for this coastal caucus.
Yeah.
Bipartisan, bicameral coastal caucus represents a number of coastal towns.
Yeah.
They're in the legislature, so it's like, guys, why don't you bring forward some legislation and say, hey, people count too, not just the tadpoles.
And I think as far as we go back to elevating this wall, the knee jerk from the state is always going to be no.
Right.
That can be overcome in certain circumstances. And this may well be one of those circumstances. But even if we elevated the wall, we don't solve the problem.
Right.
We would have a wall sticking up with water on both sides of it.
But the cost of adding a foot to the wall now is minimal versus the cost of saying, okay, now we have a major flooding problem, we've got to completely regrade, do everything. I mean, having that time where we're doing something anyway, adding an extra foot to that wall is really going to be fairly low cost. It doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
We still need to address it as a town, but at least it puts a step in the direction of the way we probably would solve the problem.
Yeah.
A piece in the puzzle.
One of the things we've done before is add reserve capacity in the walls. So you put your wall in, you have that cutoff at that elevation 5 or 6, whatever it is, but it's recognized that you can splice onto it. You can build a concrete cap on top of it. The wall would have the strength, both from a settlement and overturning perspective, to manage that additional height. Because again, we're in this unique circumstance that we could always grade the park. We could leave the wall where it is, and we could grade 20, 40 feet of the park up to a higher elevation and
then
achieve the
raise
same
and
flood
raise the street.
protection without, then raise the street. So achieve the same flood protection without raising the wall. And again, that would likely be supported, but more from the state's perspective. Say, okay, we can have a wetland buffer area or something over the course of time. So
But then the flooding, Pequot Yacht Club is there. Is there some ongoing coordination with, does Pequot Yacht Club have an interest in providing flood protection for your structure there? Because obviously, if we build a 6 foot higher bulkhead, it's just going to go through Pequot up out their driveway into the
water's cool like that, doesn't respect property lines.
So.
But yeah, it would have to be coordinated. It would have to be coordinated up to the old Pequot Yacht Club as well.
In the real world, this might all be a moot point as far as flooding goes.
Yeah.
We would have to also see where the, this is say the low point, and then obviously you go up Harbor Road, you're going up the hill, and over here there's a little notch, and then it goes down. That if those two are quote the end points or the high points, and everything in the middle gets raised up, then you have a chance, like you said. If it's undulating and then it's
that area picks up elevation pretty quickly.
Right.
As you go up the
So
road.
that would be one thing we could at least do a very preliminary look and see elevation wise, to see if this would even
We
make
have
sense.
survey scheduled, and it's probably 2 or 3 weeks out to get a full survey elevation.
Yeah.
So we have a general sense of the wall height being about 5 plus or minus now. So from looking at kind of FEMA Stillwater elevations mapped for the area, they're 10%. So 1 in 10 year event is elevated. Stillwater, not waves, is 80. It's 3 feet underwater. They're 2%, it's 9.5, it's 4.5. 1% is 10.2.
The other interesting
There's no sea level rise incorporated.
Right.
The other interesting thing is, if we provide flood protection there, what are we protecting? How many homes would be affected? At what level of flood? Not a
protecting the
lot.
road,
It's
honestly.
It's an access.
I think it's
issue.
the infrastructure more than the properties. The property, it would be the properties, probably the 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I don't think any of them, because that house has already been elevated. That one in the photograph has already been elevated. The ones across the street are on higher topo.
It'd be the ones across the street.
They're already.
Yeah,
pretty
they
high,
raise up
maybe
a few
high,
feet.
yeah.
And then we
Quickly.
see situations, because again, no matter what we do with the wall, a successful project in flood control, flood mitigation would be elevating that road. It's really hard to leave the roads low and think you're gonna pump it
Because
out.
it'll just- you'll just
You
affect
you
your
create a
water.
bowl.
Yeah.
So let's say we elevate that road 2, 3, 4 feet. Now we have potentially homeowners that are not supportive of this. Because they gotta regrade all
but that road is not a emergency egress route at
Yeah,
all. Everybody has
raise-
another
you
way
have
to
raise
go
the
up the
sidewalk
hill.
and
raise the sidewalk, raise the driveways. We do this,
ridiculous.
the homeowners that are most benefiting by it are the most adverse to it. They don't want to change anything.
Mm.
So you end up in a situation of like, we're trying to help you, but
Nobody's
we
gonna
can
go to
do-
the park in a flood, I mean.
And then what do you,
I'm sorry.
Only to
Yeah.
watch.
what are you gonna do about the Fingelli office?
Yeah.
You know, raise it, that's right at
I think
the
the
sidewalk level.
grade is up there a little bit, I think.
Not much though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2
no,
feet.
right.
again,
That would be one of the few properties affected by a flood condition.
but
That's probably the lowest, part, other than the Pequot Yacht Club building. That's probably the
But
lowest part.
this is the reason why we wanted to get everyone in the room together, because there could be an outcome that says, okay, we're gonna push hard to raise that wall. There could be an outcome that says, we're gonna leave that wall as is and address flood control at another time. But either way, collectively, we all need to know what we're doing, otherwise this project's gonna start and we don't want mayhem of stakeholders. We
Well,
wanna
one of the things that I think we still have this on the plan. For the Riverside Drive Tide Gate rebuild, the design is not, the head wall design is not going up to what would be an ideal flood resistant elevation. But the structure is ready to scab on 2 feet.
Yeah,
to
the
that.
reserve capacity.
Yeah.
That would be something that we would
I mean,
be
I
strongly advocating.
Yeah, I think that
That
should
would
be
be the way to
in
do it.
part of this in any event, because who knows how deep we'll embrace flood protection 10 years from now.
Yeah, and even if we do the steel wall, we can scab on top of the concrete cap.
Yeah.
As long as we build capacity.
Right, yeah, right.
We did this at Steel Point. There was a section of bulkhead that's in between the new restaurant building and the I-95 that we needed to elevate 3 or 4 feet. And that wall actually did not have enough reserve capacity, and we ended up having to put lightweight fill in to reduce the loads. But there's other ways to manage it and still come up to.
Talk about raising the elevation of the green in the wall. How does that would that be responded to by the Historic District Commission? Also, thinking about the deed, I don't believe that that's prohibited in the deed, but the deed has certain restrictions and it requires Sasquatch to have a role in interpreting things on this green that changing. And then some of the other things we can talk about them later, but that stone culvert, the stones are connected with the foundation of the house next to it.
Yeah.
And we learned that years ago when the property owner was talking about redoing, raising that house. And also, when we were doing the harbor management plan, we had tests done of the sediment that's out at the mouth of First Tavern Creek, and it was significantly contaminated. So that's another consideration I think we've got to think about in terms of best management practices during the work. And then there are the issues of the use of the green for access to harbor moorings, consistent with the deed restrictions. There's a whole bunch of things to think about, but I sort of, you know, if you're thinking about raising the elevation of the green and the wall itself, you're changing the character of that area, and I would think that we might run afoul with the Historic District Commission. But that's just some of my opinions.
No,
The Harbor Commission has significant. The commission isn't responsible for managing this, but the deed refers to the Park Commission and any other applicable authority of the town of Fairfield. And so since that deed was put in place, the harbor master has authority for mooring permits, and the harbor commission has review authority over proposals that could affect the waterfront property. So there's a number of things to think about, but well, anyway, I understand, I know that the problems with deep and, it's been going on for 50 years, arguing with them over the applicability, how they apply their policies and keep arguing with them, but they are what they are.
Yeah.
And so to move this project forward, how do you deal with it? The other thing is, if you don't have enough money, we've been talking with the Connecticut Port Authority about their small harbor project program.
Yeah.
A project like this is fundable through the Port Authority grant program.
Great.
So if you go through your design and permitting this year, and you come up with the opinion of probable cost, we can make an argument that the Harbor Commission can apply for those small harbor funds to add to the construction funds that we already have. There's a number of things that appreciate it. But looking at those old aerial photos that back to the 1930s. And then what Steve was saying was the imprint on the steel on the side. What is that, back to 1909? It's clearly a historic structure. But
Old
those
steel
those are my
walls.
comments.
So yeah, I think that takes this position of, are we seeking to make this flood control project, or is this a restoration of a failing wall?
From the town standpoint, it was a safety issue.
Yeah.
We really got it pushed through to finally get the funding. this
Which
time
is
around.
the restoration
The
of the failing
jagged
wall.
steel, the broken concrete
Yeah.
caps, anybody that walks over, a couple sinkholes that are
Yeah.
there, or anybody that walks over there, if anyone were to fall, it could be some serious issues. So that would be, from the town standpoint, number one, the safety.
And that's what we responded to in our response. That was our understanding of the project. So anything other than that, if we talk about elevating and talk about flood control, it's kind of diverting from the task at hand.
Yeah.
Right, and the other is really a balance of everything too.
Yeah.
As we mentioned before, aesthetics. Well, again, if somebody told me, well, we could have a much better looking bulkhead and it's gonna cost $50,000 or $100,000 more, all right, maybe we find that if it's gonna double the cost of the project, I don't think we're gonna have the funding for that. If balancing, where Jeff had mentioned, what about if Phil and Sasquatch, or what's in the deed? There was talk about mooring and ladders and all that. That's where we have everybody together, because there's stuff that's existing. There's some stuff that if we keep everything the way it is, well then there's less of a chance. But if we go to change something, either for the more positive or what appears to be a more positive impact, it's still going to affect, the 8 different organizations that are represented here. And so we may have to do a balancing. I don't know if we'll be able to appease all 8, but if we appease 7 of the 8, that's not bad. And that's kind of our goal, at least, is to get everybody involved, gather up the opinions, the comments, let everybody know that the comments will be at least investigated. Again, we can't promise anything yet at this time, but we would at least look at all the comments and if a particular group or owner has a number one concern, then do let us know. If there's other issues involved, we can try to make it work, we can, but if Deep says no, or financing, end up not working out, we'll do what we can, and we'll have them, you guys, try to incorporate that into the design, whether it be as an ad alternate in the bid or for future.
Yeah.
And then that way, if money is available, as Jeff just mentioned, if for some reason they're able to give us an additional $500,000, well, then that might make a huge difference on what we can do.
Yeah.
The ARPA money, though, which is about $1 million, has to be spent by the end of 2024. And with the way the permits and whatever going, if it takes 6 months or 12 months, they also have to design it. That does not give us a lot of time. And so that's something to consider too, where we might lean more towards doing what we can, get the approvals, and then do a future. If money comes available, or if there's a way, like you're saying, reserve capacity,
Yeah.
we're doing some sort of alternate design, we'll look into that as well. So sure.
So I'm not sure if it's on your radar, but any changes to this, to the green, will require approval from historic.
Mhm.
If you were to repair it in kind.
Yeah.
Which I don't think you're going to, I mean, that would be extremely expensive, I think, right, to replace it in kind. You know, I'm talking the wall, retaining wall.
With steel? Steel for
Well,
steel?
some of it's stone clearly, and then some of it's steel pile, which is sheet piles, right?
Yeah, we probably, really was envisioned as steel sheet pile over sheeting.
The whole thing.
Yeah, it's how far that we returned on this wall was somewhat of a discussion. How far
So if
would
it's,
be
if you're
necessary.
replacing it, you know, with what was there, like that, in that case, it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
Or repair work. But any change in appearance.
Yeah.
Would require approval, so.
You're saying like the stones to the left of that,
Stones
Yeah.
for
if that
stone,
were,
steel
if that
for
were to be clad with new steel sheet,
That would require,
the historical
Yes.
society would say, oh my God.
well, they would
They
say
require
it would have to
approval.
apply.
No, we just need to get, it needs to
Yeah.
come in and go through the process.
Okay.
Um,
It's not saying it's.
We're not gonna,
gonna
we're
be
not gonna get up to arms about it. But it's just a
And then we
process
have
that
to
has to be
transition
gone
from
through,
steel
just like
steel
any
to
other, like the project at the end of Harbor Road. You know, when you rip that apart and rebuilt it, needed approval, this too needs approval.
I
That's
think,
all, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
If
no,
you plan that
It's built
into,
into the timeline.
build it into the timeline.
yeah, I think we want to just clearly step through all the
Yeah.
processes appropriately. I do think there would be some change aesthetically, even if we went steel for steel. This wall is stone, steel, and timber. Primarily steel. I don't think that we would mimic the three different types, because I think doing so would just be, if we did all three of them, we'd do it just to match something that was pieced together years ago for probably no good reason back then.
And you might have to tie it into something,
Yeah.
and so therefore, you know, that might represent a change.
Yeah, so
I mean, could you do a sheet pile in front of the stone? Or get
we
two
could,
rooms?
yeah.
Yeah, that would be the thought. The simplest thing to do is to drive to a sheet pile as close to the existing structure right in front. Fill in between crushed stone, fill to close the gap, probably do some demo to the top. Cap it.
All of it.
Yeah, you fortify with the steel, that anything
Yeah.
behind,
Yeah, exactly.
you don't have to worry about the
Yeah.
wave action and all that.
The new wall would be,
Still
the
covered,
new wall would be designed assuming that none of the existing walls that were there and supporting everything.
So you said there are sinkholes in the part of the green?
If
Yeah,
you
Yeah,
walk up
there's
to the
some
concrete,
Yeah.
there's just little holes.
So is that due to rodents or?
let's just soil run through the wall.
Just the holes in the wall allowing
Yeah.
earth to
non-retardant?
leach
Yeah,
through.
they're relatively minor, but they're there, and obviously someone could twist an ankle.
If you're not watching, their ankle breaks.
Yeah, see, right, yeah, right there, they are, right, just good one, see.
Yeah.
Hey, Devin.
builds-
How would you access the job from the barge or from the green?
It would depend on the contractor, or it would depend on whether the town mandated one or the other. We usually like to not, when we put something to bid, not stipulate that it needs to be one or the other to allow for the most competitive bids to come in. I would think this would be a land-based job. That'd be the most cost competitive way to do it. Could a marine contractor say it's easier for him, his crane package is on a barge with the hammer and everything ready to go? They can just bring the barge here for a bit, he may, but that would be. Again, if we didn't have to stipulate, we would allow the most responsive bids.
I would think like it's land-based more, because the other is, any marine project is always relying on a tide, and so if you limit their work schedule because of tide, you know,
Yeah, we go dry here along the front of the wall, so he'd have to leave.
that's, yeah.
So- So just to back up 1 second before we get into the materials, because I think that's gonna be important in this discussion. We're not really talking about raising this at this point. Maybe I think it's building reserve capacity and for future.
I'd be comfortable with just building.
I'm
Yeah.
fine, I mean, personally, I'm fine with that.
I think think
My,
that's,
my focus for flood protection is more the flap gates that are there.
Yeah.
If they were made a little better, that might limit elevated tides from backing up the little, saltwater drainage culvert,
Yeah.
freshwater drainage. I guess that's the terminus of, Horse Tavern Brook. Is that true?
That's
So- So if the saltwater backs up in Horse Tavern Brook,
Yeah.
it gets to the center of Southport pretty quickly. I think.
yeah, what we're looking at right now is we had as an ad alternate in this proposal, doing hydraulic analyses of
Mhm.
changing the pipes, like we were doing down at South Pine Creek. What was issued with our scope of work is not to redo that analysis, but to go through, make sure the walls of that tide gate area are sound, and make sure that the northern flap gate is functional. Right now, it's limited in its range of motion due to the wall is kind of packed. So those are the improvements that we made there under our current scope of work.
Because that where those flap gates are, I don't know what the elevation is, but that kind of isn't too far to higher existing elevations where that.
It could be all,
That
that could
could
all
be-
be overtopped. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, I think now it could be overtopped. Or run around the north side of it.
Yeah.
Or if that would just recontour a little bit and so, because I drove by there once and the flap gates were chained open. So what happens whenever we're going to have a storm? DEP goes and says, oh, our checklist, we have to unchain those flap gates. How does that
The town.
work?
Yeah, the town.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
DPW. I'm sorry, not- no,
Yeah, so that's currently
I
how it.
misspoke.
They're-
Well, it's tied in again, even in a group that's not here, but when we go to that, obviously, we have to go through our conservation and land wetlands, you know.
So-
that area.
But again, those types of improvements aren't,
Not,
they're not in this current scope.
And then the other thought I had talking about the little dinghies to go out to the moorings and stuff, whatever functionality this area has now, if we can improve that somehow, because I guess you climb down that, you pull your boat in with the little string and you climb down that ladder and step into the boat.
Yep.
There's probably a better way to do that.
Yeah, that would have to be consistent with the deed restrictions. That's.
Yeah. And not really conceptualized here, whether they're just gonna like it in place, but there's no reason we couldn't improve it if that was the will of the commission, the Harbor Commission, the will of the deed holder, there'd be a lot of layers for that improvement that would just be the town's influence.
Yeah, I think these are noted points.
Number, yeah.
But I don't think anything that we would do as far as wall improvements would preclude other improvements.
Yeah, no matter what bulkhead we use.
Yeah,
If you
yeah, something similar.
determined to make improvements so that it could be done.
So is this type of stone wall just out of the question?
Well, we wanted to bring it up, again, a couple things, what we didn't want to have happen is 12, 18, 24 months from now, they show up to drive steel piles. And they cut them off at the old elevation, and everyone throws their hands up and says, what the heck are we doing? We don't want steel, we want to hire. I think we have good reason for why we're not doing higher right now. As far as steel goes, it's currently a steel wall. Steel has a lot of simplicity from a constructability standpoint, and economic standpoint. We don't have to do a lot of site disruption. If we were to do a stone wall, we would want to be, we don't know what we have for the existing stones. Someone thought they weren't good enough for some reason to oversheet it with timber and steel, so we don't know definitively, but I think we can trust someone's judgment, so yeah, something was wrong to warrant this. So to go to the stone wall, we probably would tear back probably about 20 feet of the park.
Maybe like
Excavate that,
bench, just
excavate
as an
that,
idea.
yeah, beyond that bench,
Yeah, cut it
excavate it
back.
all back. stockpile material, but then construct the stone masonry.
Right.
And either found it on a concrete,
Great view.
yes, something, or stone, I've had some kind of underlayment for settlement. Settlement. I don't think it's out of the question. I mean, from our perspective, we can design it just fine. It's gonna be more expensive. It's gonna be more disruptive.
The side of your peak lot's deeper side too, so. that
Yeah.
may require
Yeah,
higher
when the
foundations.
tide mill, my office has been
Yeah.
at tide mill for like 35 years, so I
Yeah.
watched the whole thing unfold, and I went to the hearings for that, where they wanted to do Bowmanite abutments on the bridges that had these beautiful granite
Yeah,
abutments, and we got them to take the old granite blocks and they clad the abutments of the bridge with the granite, so it looks way better
yeah,
than it was going to look.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some kind of a hybrid thing where you could do a sheet pile and then have, just talking off the
Yeah.
cuff. But I think it would really be a shame if the part that you see that faces south gets turned into sheet piling, which is now currently stone. at some point-
south, yeah, yep,
You know what I mean? And there's actually a little habitat there.
Yeah, I mean,
Where
this,
there's
this,
grass
this
growing.
photo of the sheet pile, I mean, that's pretty representative. of
Yeah.
what A simple oversheet
Yeah.
cap would look like. I mean, it's not gonna look much different than that, if that's what.
Just I want to be clear though, Jack, what section you want to go to the?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
section. that-
This section.
the
south
first
section.
Oh, okay,
Currently,
that, by the elbow.
I think people would scream bloody murder if that turned
Some of
into-
it right now.
So, right, yeah, from that, all right, that's the one, that's the area. All right, I didn't know if you were talking
Because
about.
that's sort of the gateway to the.
Yeah, and I mean,
historic district.
That structure runs the whole property, it's just not been oversheet.
Yeah.
So when we look, like, we've done a lot of work across the harbor.
Like the country club, that thing falls down every year, but
And
if you were to start from scratch, you do it.
Well, no, basically, we've been working for them for years, and they do small sections at a time.
Yeah.
And each small section we do is, it's a reinforced concrete wall that gets reclad with the stone that was there.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, from the water side, it looks the way it always looked, it's just standing up. Here we have a situation where now, at least for the last 115 years, if the stamp on the sheet is correct.
Yeah, and that, the wall, the stone retaining wall that's shown, that's kind of a dry stack, there's no order in that, which is
Right.
basically what this is, but those are tiny stones. It need to be larger
Yeah,
dimension
bigger
stone. If we went with a cladding stone alternative, it would be a mortar, entirely mortar clad. We couldn't just stack loose stone,
Right.
it would need to be all mortar. So it would still look a little different, I guess,
Yeah.
because it would be mortar joints entirely.
Yes, we could veneer the steel. That's something Steve brought up the other day for this meeting. We veneered plenty of concrete walls in our day. We haven't veneered any steel ones. Not good to be done.
Veneering, is that, form lining or is it
No,
actually?
stone facade,
facing and you
stone
gotta put
facing.
the
Yeah,
For the dovetails.
Dovetails, yeah, okay.
So it becomes a bit of a, when you're talking about driving steel,
Maintenance.
it's kind of a heavy civil construction, you know, talk about masonry now. The art comes in and the science
Yeah.
diminishes a bit.
And the money comes in.
The money comes in.
What's
Would
the,
veneer be a similar, it won't be the same look, obviously, because it will have border, but I mean, would it be at least mimic more what the
Yeah.
historical?
It would look like the sections of the Country Club Fairfield walls that have been replaced over the years.
I think people in Southport, like our group, would want to know that there's an opportunity to do something that would look nicer and what that would cost, and then we could decide if it was something we wanted to raise money for.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I do. The issue I see with that is one of the things the state pins us on is encroachment into the harbor.
Yeah.
And I think the Harbor Commission is not gonna want us to encroach more than the harbor possibly would need to. That's usually stipulated at a foot and a half. And that's
which is the width of
it's
the
about the
convoluted.
depth of the sheets. So we wouldn't have the depth necessary to veneer unless we ripped out the old wall. It worked back.
Well, I guess
in.
under the zero.
Yeah, under the COP, but I would say in general, I don't think we can make a strong enough case. Under another
And that
process.
veneer about, what are you talking about?
18 inches a foot.
Yeah.
You don't, you want
More than I
it,
thought.
it's not like brickwork, you want it to be.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking 6 or 8 inches, but it is, that's 18.
Well, I mean,
That's
you
important
could-
to know, though.
It's gonna be saltwater exposed community. It's gonna last as long as 6 inches or will last you.
Yeah.
So the beefier, the better, you know, that's the point.
What's the,
Having said that, it is gonna be another maintenance item.
Yeah.
So.
what's
water's
the
not gonna
relative
last.
cost and life
Just-
expectancy of steel, navy timber, bulkhead, and stone?
Stone's great, stone
Stone lasts for.
Stone will be here when we're all long gone, and that's the nice thing about it. The thing about stone is it is more of an art, the art of that becomes significant. So you can see masons that build beautiful stone walls, and you see people that dump a bunch of rock together. So kind of controlling that. Cost is a challenge because you have guys who build stone walls all the time. They don't necessarily need to be marine guys. Okay, we'll work on the tides, we got a few excavators, we'll do this work. Versus you say, all right, we'll put a steel wall in, now we need guys, and cranes and hammers. So you're trading complexity of construction with simplicity of construction, with more effort, contractor type, who can bid it. My general sense in determining costs right now, in the best of times, is my least favorite thing to do. Second least favorite thing after regulatory. Now it's, I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna cost me to fill my gas tank. to go home. I don't know.
So what's the, what,
basis east today is already steel and it's not visible from the village side.
The historic district goes all the way to the other.
Right,
side.
but the side that, yeah, but the side that's facing south here
Yeah.
is the one that we really would want to make
Yeah,
attractive.
Yeah.
If
so
someone
maybe
always-
that's the trade-off.
Yeah, then you're really talking about more limited area because this one has a little bit of that steel facing for the first 15, 20 feet maybe.
Yeah.
And then it turns into stone wall.
Right.
And if we made that all stone. then
Maybe we mimic that. We have grade is coming up in that location too, so we might even be able to do just a shallow footing concrete wall there.
I mean, it looks like they never put any kind of batter on that wall, so that's probably one of the reasons it didn't hold up very well.
Well, it's got better now.
Yeah.
It's going the other way. It's about a foot or so
Out.
Yeah, from top to toe, maybe a little less than a foot. It's
but
really-
what's the relative cost? I mean, among those three, is steel the cheapest? I mean, I would think that be only because there's less labor. Yeah, you got a lot of big equipment, but there's less labor.
Yeah, if we
The
can
timber
go,
one has a lot of labor.
if we don't have to do any excavation, we do everything by oversheeting. The state, sometimes the state says, okay, because this wall is not straight. So we're gonna have to follow it within 18 inches of this undulating shape. Sometimes, again, using Steel Point as an example, but that whole job, that whole bulkhead was a zero cut fill job. Where sometimes we were out 100 feet in the water driving the bulkhead, sometimes we're back 100 feet on land. And they dug the material out. If we had to dig the material out to drive the sheets, that would be pretty expensive. If we could just put sheets in front of it, that's gonna be the least cost option. Again, cost of materials is so fluid right now.
Yeah.
So if we have a big spike in steel, that can then tilt something to something that'd be more labor intensive, i.e. such as rock. The rock works are funny because rock on one site is a liability for someone's asset. Someone's blasting rock, it's, please take this stuff off my site, I don't need it. And if you can align a job where someone is getting rid of their stone, you're almost getting material for free. Seen that work favorably in the past, but again, it's the right job at the right time. But to go in order cost, I'd say least cost steel, next timber, highest cost stone.
So Devin, how long has this stone wall been there?
The steel's been there for 100 and something
Yeah,
years.
the steel is dated. That's just pretty cool.
How far back did the stone go?
Gotta be the mid-1800s.
I mean, I'm saying Yeah.
Oh, how, I don't
Oh,
know.
behind it?
We've done some work at Pequot
It's
where
gotta
it's,
be mostly stone, I imagine.
I don't know. Looking at the walls in the harbor as I've seen them, including Pequot, including across the harbor, they're not the most robust structures I've seen.
Well, what we were thinking about
When you rebuild the wall with the same stone.
beyond
You
that.
probably don't have enough to meet current
559,
code guides.
that looks close up of steel.
Yeah, the size of stone that's there would never, from a dry stack perspective, never affect that size. It's just too, you need larger. Yeah, there's a marking right here, sheet pile.
19.
It's really cool.
I have to admit, I didn't think it was that old.
Well, it says 1909, 1911, and it says patent, but this, that might just be when it was patented, but there's another marking right here, which is the Bethlehem Steel Company.
Yeah.
Lackawanna.
Lackawanna, which only
Yeah.
only operated to 1923.
Oh.
So somewhere around there. Just for the steel piece. So that
Yeah.
wall must have stood there. I would imagine, before this side.
Well, I think the wharves were sitting on that, the old wharves that burned,
Yeah.
the Onion docks.
Yeah.
That was
They should-
where they
wherever
were.
I should get those
There might be some
plates.
pictures.
Taken out.
Devin, can I ask a question? Just a little bit? This is 7 years old. It shows the undulation there. But it also shows some of the yacht club stops extending over the area of the green. So is the yacht club going to have to relocate some of these docks during the construction, or how? And then there's also, these boats. So this is something I wondered about, because the yacht club's property is to here. So this clearly shows those docks going over to here.
I wouldn't think, 'cause I don't think we're gonna be attacking this from the water, I think it's done from land.
And the other question is,
And they want to push themselves out a little bit more if it's
how long
possible.
do you think the construction will last? When will you do it? And if you
I would
done it one
imagine everyone would
construction
wanna
season,
do it in the winter, but
But would it be just one season to do it?
yeah, should they?
So we shouldn't interfere with the more investment.
I think
I'm just
this would be one we want.
concerned about that.
I think it'd be November to March, is what they
Yeah.
typically for the boat ramp,
Yeah.
and the DEP for in-water restrictions and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's probably kind of like.
And is the
Timeline
yacht
is
is
6
the yacht club
months.
also
It's
planning
probably
a
6
project to replace their wall?
They're discussing it.
Is that intended to be coordinated with your work, or doing it at the same time?
Not that I'm aware of.
well, the yacht, people at yacht club,
Yes.
In my experience, contracting public and private work together is a challenge.
but the design would incorporate if they
It
have
would,
a design.
yeah, it would not harm the adjacent property, it would have to be designed. We usually would return our designs on our own property such that it's not independent, the properties become somewhat independent. But I think, yeah, construction, I think we would want to stipulate a November to March, November to April construction window, that would be part of the bid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, permitting might tell us when DEP do it.
Yeah, and back to the return part, yeah, this wall, again. No one's knows property lines, the wall was built continuous to the property, so. Yeah, we would typically put a return along the property line to come on shore, perpendicular to the main wall, which would. It kind of ties you back to your own property, it also gives you some protection if your neighbor's wall falls, and now you're protected for a return stretch. And that would typically be, you wouldn't see it necessarily, I suppose you could see it, but typically it's like a barrier just below the surface, you wouldn't see it. But that's typically something we would do, it's a little different on the other side. here where we're already kind of at a different angle. When it's continuous like this, we may look to put it in, you know, something below grade like that. If you assume the overshoot, something like that.
What kind of soil would you anticipate getting into if you start excavating?
Wood, rock,
Coal ashes, coal ashes.
everything.
Actually, that brings up a good point, because weren't you guys saying that we might need to do some borings?
We have test boring
We have
scheduled,
test boring scheduled,
but structural, not chemical.
not yet. So looking at the properties of the soil from an engineering standpoint, how the wall would be designed to hold it. Tentatively, we have land boring scheduled for after. So that,
Next,
they say that. So,
we weren't sure.
okay, yeah,
Thursday, Friday, or next.
yeah, it's right now it's Tuesday, Wednesday, just 2 days. Could be Wednesday, Thursday.
Do you know about how many borings and what's the
Just,
size?
we just have 2, so it would be, somewhere down one south end, and somewhere down. this end.
But they're like 6 inch?
Yeah, I mean, they're 3-inch pipe. And then splits, basically a truck, it's gonna look like a truck, it's got a small tower, and it puts a hole this big. in it.
Well, again, going with I don't know if we need anybody's permission on that or not.
I think
mean, that's
Sasquatch Association, I think Jack is on Zoom meeting,
Yeah.
had a concern. He will email everyone saying that just to notify the members that there's something that is expected 2 days, maybe the green will be closed to the public, pedestrian access. So
Yeah, I think it should be close.
It's required for
Just
the
a little-
project, so.
it's
but
just a,
Heads
just
up,
want a heads up, so nobody's surprised and asking questions, hey, what is going on, and why am I not aware of this, so. just
Yeah.
to give them
And
heads
that's,
up.
that's gonna inform some of our decisions on concrete or steel, what may be a front runner.
I think Jack had that concern, so he's on Zoom right now.
Yeah, and then they will be back to do borings on the water side, probably a week or so later. A couple of small steel floats. They're rare.
I don't know the time.
Yeah, I want to catch it because they use a ramp, but you may shut down.
Yeah, I
for
would
a
say
while.
3 days shut down.
So,
2 days.
Yeah. we're about-
That's on the green.
That's the buildings that were there, the onion wharves. And it shows a picture that was probably, I don't know how old, but at least before the sheet piling, the
Yeah.
stone came down to the water line and there were wood pilings in front of it.
Yeah.
And then there was a wooden deck that went between the buildings and the edge of the, went right over the top of the stone.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because that's where the ships would pull up, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
This is on the green?
That is, my understanding is that those buildings were right along
Right there,
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Probably find some of that.
Yeah, you probably look at old-
Losing on
old maps and see.
Yeah, the piles are probably just fendering for the boats.
Yeah, so the boats wouldn't crash into the rock.
Um,
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's the Pequot Library picture file.
So it seems like we're kind of zeroed into
Could be.
reconstruction like in kind, stone wall on the south side. And probably the only change of note would be where the timber, there's a stretch of timber oversheeting. On the north portion near the yacht club. I wouldn't recommend switching from steel oversheeting to timber oversheeting just to mimic what was there. I don't think there was a compelling historic reason for it.
Maybe they did that before steel.
It could have been.
Yeah,
The depth in the basin is not navigable, so I would think that the harbor commission probably would not have a concern with filling out. It's necessary to stone on that inside because it's not navigable.
Right. So. Adam, you don't see that being a problem. Story, switch from timber to steel.
No, I mean,
Timber's nothing special. That stretch.
That's historic.
That's
I think this is the first time we have like historic steel, the steels of it now.
That's staying too. Now, most importantly is, saving the green.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there
And
was,
safety.
there was the thought when it came in, it was like, I mean, it's clearly all failing.
Could do nothing.
Do you wait for the main failure before you decide if the historic nature and the aesthetics are that critical to everyone? But
We said,
funding
I've been here
wise, yeah.
32 years, and I think 1992 was the first request to do.
But it
Prairie
didn't fail.
Green bulkhead,
It hasn't
and-
failed per se, right?
Yeah.
Don't wanna miss the opportunity here.
Yeah.
so.
So one thing on regulatory, we talked about the oversheeting and what we're gonna be limited to, we talked about the height. There's another component here that it looks like we have a lot of wetlands growth in the face of this wall. Believed to be high tide bush, that's gonna be verified. This might require mitigation.
The DP didn't notice it, so that's why I
Considered
wondered.
wetlands.
But that was only the two people, it wasn't the bot, yeah, I know. So,
Is there a space there? It's like it's.
You know, so you could just hang a planter over it. I mean, I had a kid, he had a planter shelf, just put it right back.
Well, I mean,
That's all it is.
there's things
Planter
we
shelf now.
we probably
well, it's not,
likely
it's
could.
not endangered or anything. It's
No,
not
no,
like-
it's a resource that would require mitigation.
That's just growing between the oversheeting and
Yeah.
the fill that's been placed between the two.
Now, now we could.
And it won't grow behind. 'cause it's-
Yeah, it's at a nice
Yeah,
elevation.
yeah.
Yeah, it has to, it's elevation dependent, so we could maybe put a shelf. One of the things, we're doing this at one of the safe harbor marinas in Stratford, we're doing a bulkhead, we're doing a low bulkhead, but the top of the bulkhead is like a knee high water, maybe a foot below knee high water. And then you come back with a 10-foot shelf and there's another wall to up to the grade height, and in that low shelf, it's meant for marsh to grow. Could do a little mini thing like that off to the south somewhere. They're probably gonna want us to mitigate on site. I don't think we put us mitigate elsewhere in town.
So I mean, you're gonna have 8 people agree on something in the DEP, you can do something, so.
When you do the work, the intertidal area that you see there with the shells and the exposed, would that be affected, or should you be excavating that if you go out a foot and a half?
Wouldn't be excavating, you drive your sheep out through it, they
Drive the sheet
feel
out
like,
through.
yeah. You'd have that space that would be, so the inner belly of the sheep might be an inch or two, and the outer belly of the sheep might be
Yeah.
16 inches. You could fill that up with crushed.
Yeah, I mean, really, this becomes the only impact here.
That's my question.
That's it. I mean, anything I think minimal, but it's just where it hits the bottom.
It's only what, 3/8 inch?
Yes, and it's core, I mean, it's corrugated.
Yep.
You know, so it's going in now, so we should do that. These sheets are these are very flat sheets. This would have more of
Yeah, we can try like to do deeper sheets with no anchor system, so we wouldn't have to
Right.
do any excavation.
yeah, you given the height, we could probably, a lot of the bulkheads, steel or timber will have a buried back anchor. Alternatively, steel is thick enough, big enough, it could just stick in the ground. without an anchor.
Yeah.
And that's from a construction standpoint, you're not excavating back to install anchors behind it. Just throw it. So that's probably the tap.
I would think.
Cantilever, they call it cantilever wall.
How would you concrete cap it, or how would you? build it?
Yeah, some kind of cap.
Yes, it's, yeah, right. Yeah, I think right now they just have wood. This is wood over the old steel. It's probably been replaced maybe a couple of times to the wall.
cement steel is strong enough that we want to tie back.
Yeah, exactly. That would be our thought, just to really limit disturbance.
And some goes into where rock ledge is, I think, to drive it, because if we cantilever sheets, we drive it first. The other is how much reserve capacity we put in, and I suppose there's another discussion of achieving that reserve capacity, might be splicing on, but also might be adding an anchor.
So what's your thinking of regrouping this group? Would you envision updates on a regular basis?
Defer to the town on that.
Well, we, at our last meeting, we were thinking that they would, we would meet with you guys first, and then from there, maybe have them do, a lot of times when we do a bridge, we do a 3-type study. And here would be a very, at least preliminary, where again, we could get the difference in cost. And again, nobody really knows. They can only give us what is current, if you know what I mean. So, you know, and then and just again, find the magnitude, is it 10% more, is it 100, you know, it's double in the cost. And then from there, we probably have them do at least something conceptual, and then I think we would come back. And have another meeting, which I don't know how long it will take to get that far. Meeting late August or September, or,
Yeah, sounds
yeah,
about
right, 2 months.
Yeah, we have just kind of survey and investigation work going on for the next few weeks. We don't have a survey, an actual survey with some actual elevations, look at grading park.
Right before school or around Labor
Yeah.
Day, some, you know.
Yeah, probably get you the kind of report, write-ups about each structure.
And the soil boring might.
Right,
change our
and,
tune.
and mention that too, obviously.
Right,
The
yeah.
Soil board, well, this, you know, we were looking at, or, you know, this idea, but now it might not work, or, whoa, these were better than we thought. You know, maybe it's not gonna be as expensive.
Yeah, we
Or we
know,
might need to do additional you know, or whatever.
we know we have rock ledge around. If we go there, we find out we have rock ledge 5 feet below grade. Cantilever steel sheets, not gonna be the front runner.
What's the face of the Pequot Properties bulkhead material? What is that? Is that steel also?
Stone.
It's also,
Yeah.
so I'm talking about the aesthetics.
It's all
of
aesthetic.
it.
Yeah.
So
Just-
it's all stone,
It's all stone.
and then we go to, then we
Basically, the
go,
whole
metal.
harbor is stone except for this stretch where we have the timber.
So that's an argument to understand what the cost of doing it stone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the cost is the slight disturbance.
Right, I get it. And what we'd be doing now is putting a new steel section
It's very,
up against the Pequot.
yeah, it's very
stone.
easy. You're not. Here, if we're digging all this stuff out, we don't know what we're gonna have. We're gonna have to do some test digs. See how much stone we might have. You know, it's. Yeah, there's cost, there's dollars, cost, and then cost of convenience. Factor, how that gets weighed by the town.
Is that the exit of a storm drain
Yeah.
with no flat gate on it? So we can build the wall as high as we want, it's still gonna come up through the grates.
Then veneering is still an option, which at least gives the illusion of stuff.
But veneering is something we have to know sooner than later, because we probably end up having to move the steel wall back to give us the width within the 18 inches to allow the veneering. At which point we've got to rip out the old steel, and that's sometimes easier said than done, because the knuckles get all almost like fused
Yeah.
together. And then you're trying to pick this thing up and the steel keeps falling apart. So we've had this, where we were not able to get those walls out. We had to cut those walls off below the mud line and build our new wall inside it. So if we want to do steel with a veneer, it's gonna be a different project.
Yeah, I'm thinking more this, look here, as opposed to the piece.
Yeah.
Well, just think, 100 years from now, a sheet steel pile wall will be historic.
This one is the most historic
This one
steel
is
wall
pretty
I've ever
historic.
seen.
It all
Thank you,
depends on
Donald.
your frame of reference.
Yeah, you gotta save that piece with the stamp on it.
Yeah, that's.
That deserves it.
Yeah, they should always chop that out.
Yeah. So.
Anything else? I think we went through, yeah, so construction, I guess, is kind of somewhat steered by the time, November through March time period. And the funding is through the end of 2024.
That's what it is, correct.
Right, so it's probably a 2023.
Yeah,
Fall,
fall
winter,
23,
through
24, winter, yeah,
And
that's.
so we're a year and a few months out.
So it'd be important to hit that,
Yeah.
obviously, because they give us to the end of 24, but if.
Yeah.
If there's an in-water restriction by the DEP, say October or November, that might not give us enough time.
And then as far, yeah, site access, I mean, the park closed. I don't see an alternative for it.
Yeah,
Well,
it'd be closed. That's something that I don't fully understand the interrelation of the deed holder of the town.
Yeah, we
Do we
don't
need
need,
easements for doing this construction? Should that be getting lined up?
The only other thing, would it be possible to do, I mean, would it be possible to have them do like half the park, you know, in other words, no reason to close the whole thing at, or at least at first, or is it better off just?
I think.
Or you would
Cost
use-
yourself dollars.
Yeah.
It's just gonna cost, just more money. It's about 350 feet, including, it's like 250, the long stretch, another 100 feet turn.
And
If they're
again,
just,
if
if
they
they're
do
just
it in
driving
November
sheet,
and December, at least it's
if
a
they're just,
little bit better than.
if we do just land on driving sheet with no additional veneer, they're gonna move fairly quickly. As long as obstruction wise, it's not hitting anything. But it becomes fairly simple. You know, they would need to do some demo at the top to fit the cap.
But Bill, the town will review what it would take to be constructing on there, if easements are necessary or.
Yeah, we'll look into that and see.
But the deed holder is the town of Fairfield.
Right.
So Sasquatch is the representative of the people of
Right.
Southport,
Sure.
and when questions arise concerning the interpretation of the deed or what's being proposed. And the town agency with management responsibilities, Parks and Rec. Commission. So I was gonna ask Bill, do they have to meet Bill and as the responsible town
I have to, I don't know.
agency and vote to do this or approve the plan?
I don't even know, I'll be honest with you, who mows the lawn, just as an example, is it Sasquatch or is it the town?
No, the Sasquatch, the town is the owner. The deed is from the Terry to the town. Actually, there's two pieces of property, there's two deeds, but you know, all.
Their job is intention meeting enforcement of the deed. They have no other role.
Oh,
It's town property.
The Sasquatch is recognized as the representative and spokesman of the people of Southport. And special weight shall be given to the views and wishes of said association in any controversy.
And so that's what is an association, a Southport association.
Sasquatch Association for Village Improvement Incorporated.
And Public Works is involved in the tie-up there, right?
Parks and Rec is involved with the condition of people to have access through the room to the boats tied.
But Public Works not in that.
Public Works will provide assistance.
Oh,
And engineering is part of Public Works, but it's the park. I don't know. It's different here. Park Commission and these. Parks and Rec. I'm just saying that just to make sure everything is.
I could ask them if they want to get involved and have a vote or just keep
Go
them
on in.
informed. Thanks, Jeff. As I said, I haven't had a chance to.
I sent you an electronic.
No,
copy,
I have
but-
the deed, I did read the deed, it talks about not having benches and not having utility parking. And,
Adam, you still sign sheet?
Not
or-
yes, it doesn't talk in
Ladders.
detail, like, you know, you cannot do construction or something that's like not down last month. So it just talks about no legal parkings and no benches, no pedestrians, no, no concerts, no parties, some of the talks in detail about that. So I did read and I think I was communicating with Tyler from Susquehanna Association before this project even started, just to understand from the perspective, like what exactly, we will be doing this work and we will not be. So that's where he had some questions about, like, what kind of load are you going to put on this park and what are you trying to do? So I just explained him that we're just replacing this. It's nothing, not erecting any structures and not making it a parking lot. So.
Jacob and Adam, if you have a couple minutes after, I just want to, there's a proposal by Greater Bridgeport Transit Bus, one of the bus stations, and they want to put shelter, a little sidewalk, so I just want to throw it by, that's on Route 1, so. A couple minutes after. I had. Other than that,
Yeah.
We'll shoot again, maybe
Yes.
reconvene either when, we'll say aiming for late September, late August or early September. If you guys progress earlier, we can maybe move it up a little bit earlier. And if we're a little bit delayed, maybe we'll make it mid-September, but at least for a goal, I think that's a good time.
Yeah.
And then, most people's vacations would
Yeah.
start to.
I
end at
think
that time.
based on the construction schedule, I think we're good. That's all right.
And then, again, we'll either have somebody type it up or I can make copies and then send it out if anybody wants. Nobody minds if I share contact information, right?
I am actually recording this meeting through Zoom, so we may put that recording on, because Jack is.
Oh, well, actually, we should have. Jack, do you have any?
Yeah.
Any questions or concerns or comments?
The only question I think Mega just answered, which is, it sounds like it's recording, but no minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's recording, so we will just turn it into the minutes.
And you were all absolutely correct about our role. That discussion, that short discussion is spot on correct. So if we could have access to the recording, I made 5 pages of notes and I could hear most of it, but not everything. And so that would help to go back and, but this has been very educational and helpful.
I think, Bill, if you're gonna send out contact details, can you actually put organizations?
Yes,
Well, some of them have it on there already.
I don't think I did.
But okay, yep, we'll do that. Yep.
I have all the emails.
That would be helpful. Thank you guys for having this meeting.
So welcome, thanks for the feedback, it was very helpful.
To bring it further. Just to-
The same staff.
All right, thank you.
It's gonna be.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we need to cover that. Related to these.
It's actually, the next sheet is actually farther down.
It's a 100 years. This thing shows.
You split took off this house. Was the last one.
Oh, really?
Which explains why there was posts in there and it didn't look like it was water.
Right,
It was like a little.
I don't know if you've ever looked at Rhode Island. There's so much.
So I think those areas.